In a day of fireworks, we have a lot to explain and show to you today. And we're going to start off with an overnight attack in Russia and Ukraine, a hellish aerial attack by Russians against the Ukrainian city of Pavlohrad. But we're also going to talk about some other political fireworks here in Washington, D.C. And even we're going to even touch on some stuff with the Epstein situation, which by itself is also some more fireworks, led especially among Trump supporters. And we're even going to talk about Iran again. So a lot to get into today. Let's jump right into it. First of all, let's get into that hellish attack in the city of Pavlohrad. That's more important than you may see. You may never have heard of that city before, but it's a lot more important than you may think. And Gary's showing you just some of the devastation that was overnight. You can see why there's some are calling this a hellish attack because Russia continued on with its drone. This one was 300 drones and missiles. And again, you have Ukraine claiming they shot down everything, but the images on your screen tell a different story. So don't really pay a lot of attention to what they claim was intercepted because things continue to go through. That's the reason why Russia continues to fire them. But as we keep talking about this, the onslaught, the relentless, large-scale onslaught that continues to hit deep into Ukraine-controlled territory, is having an impact also at the line of contact. And let me show you a little bit why that is. This is from Military Summary earlier today, talking about this strike and its impact on the front line.
And we understand why the Russians chose the city of Pavlohrad as a primary target for their missiles and drones. And the answer is very simple, because if you can take a look at this map, you're going to see that there are lots of railways that, first of all, go in the direction of Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinovka agglomeration, and there are several supply lines that go in the direction of the city of Pakrovsk, where the major battle of the summer of 2025 is taking place currently. So most likely the Russians were trying to destroy probably warehouses, ammo depots, Western weapon, Ukrainian forces, with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainian authorities to bring these units and to introduce them in the city of Pakrovsk.
Now, you may recognize that the city of Pakrovsk there in the map that he was showing, because that's something that we talk about a lot and have been for months. And my personal assessment has been that this was the main effort for the Russians in the entire Eastern Front along the entire 700 some odd mile contiguous line of contact, is that everything seemed to be pointing toward the area of Pakrovsk. We had George Mamsarov, who was a Russian journalist and a former Russian soldier, who confirmed to us that the Russians have labeled that as their priority of effort, and they are putting everything they can to include a number of supporting efforts both north and south of that, and as far north as Sumy and the Kharkiv area, to keep the Ukrainian troops pinned down so that they can't move troops into that area as reinforcements. So let me just show you just how much on the ground Russia has been accumulating here of late by showing you our good friend Alex from History Legends just a couple of days ago.
In the past few weeks, the Russian army managed to break through in between two very strategic cities for Ukraine, Pakrovsk and Kostiantynivka. How did the Russians do it? Our friends from the Kyiv Post wrote, "Momentum is slipping. Russia's summer offensive is losing steam." What? Let's fact check this real quick by looking at the map. This was the frontline situation in mid-April between Pakrovsk and Kostiantynivka, where we last left off. And this is the situation now, 3 months later. The Russians were aura farming like crazy with this offensive. Plus 12 kilometers in this direction, plus 12 kilometers northwards, and plus 20 kilometers to the west. And let's cut the BS. If the Russians capture Radinsky, Pakrovsk will be in an operational encirclement.
And you could have drawn that same kind of line. And you may have noticed at the beginning of that clip there that there's also a cauldron forming around Konstantinivka. So those two areas are already being cut in half, and by Russia moving up along the flanks and getting in between them both, and then building up its support along the flanks to protect their forward movement, they're putting both of those. So if you get into a situation, as it appears we are, to where you're putting both of those agglomerations into the cauldron at the same time, you can see how very quickly the entire Ukraine line of contact on the entire Eastern Front could buckle in the very center. And of course, if it buckles in the center, then, or if it even gets close to buckling in the center, then Ukraine will be forced into a situation to where you're trying to plug your finger into the dock and you run out of fingers and the leaks keep coming. Do you move folks out of the Zaporizhia front in the south? Do you move folks from the north up around Sumy or Kharkiv and move them into the front line to try to plug those gaps? Because if you do, Russia has troops up in those areas and they can take advantage of that and push in there too. For example, in the Sumy area, even according to information we showed you yesterday, Russia has about 50,000 troops in that area, but they're not pushing that hard. They're keeping the contact going on. They're keeping with drone attacks, with artillery attacks, just to keep the Ukrainian guys pinned down. But if they were to withdraw significant numbers of troops from that area to try to plug a gap in the Kostiantynivka and Pakrovsk bulge, then you see that now Russia has the troops on the ground and can then start to press forward again. And of course, that pushes closer. That's a lot closer to Kiev, and that's a lot more sensitive to the Ukraine side. So they're unlikely to do that. But that's the whole point, that Russia is trying to set up this dilemma that you just can't solve on the ground. And now then we see the continuation of this air attack is going in a very specific way to try and destroy the beyond the front line supply chains, the command and control centers, I'm sure, communication networks, and obviously ammo depots, fuel depots, etc. Anything to weaken further the ability of the Ukraine side to defend in those two areas while Russia puts increasing pressure. And they are accelerating. And again, bear that in mind. This is an acceleration of the offensive, according to I think it was The Economist, the biggest move in 2 years. So when you add in the increased within just the last 10 days or so in the air, this massive increase, anywhere from 300 to 700 aerial attacks per night, including both missiles, Kinzhal missiles, glide bombs, drones, and of course artillery along the front line added into that. You see, it's a pretty hellish time for the Ukraine. But you know who also is having a hellish time? Speaking of that, you have Tulsi Gabbard. Last night, if anybody has been paying attention to the American news, we had a pretty big bombshell dropped that Tulsi Gabbard said that there was a treasonous conspiracy has been launched that she uncovered. Here's how she put it.
What these documents detail, to me, in my view, cannot be explained as anything but a treasonous conspiracy. This is not so different from what we saw under George W. Bush, when we saw that manufactured intelligence claiming there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that kicked off a war that changed our country, that changed the lives of so many people like myself who went and served in those wars. The implications of manufactured intelligence are real.
Okay, that's a very, very serious charge, manufactured intelligence. And the gist of what she's talking about here, and we'll detail this in just a minute, where she's saying that in 2016, the Obama administration, before President Trump assumed office on January 20th of 2017, that they had intelligence that Russia had been trying to manipulate the American election, but she's going to claim that they failed, and then that the Obama team said, you know what, let's change this. One of the big arguments that she's making here is that there is this not creeping coup, how did she play it, a years-long coup. That's why she says a treasonous conspiracy, because she's arguing that Obama and a number of other people, very high-ranking in the Obama organization, said that they were actually trying to unseat President Trump. And so she says that there needs to be accountability.
These actions that were taken demand accountability. The American people not only deserve the truth and accountability, when we look at the future of our country as a democratic republic and the American people's ability to have faith that when they go and cast a vote at the ballot box, that the will of the people will be respected by those in government, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, this is literally what is at stake here. So we are referring all of our documents to the Department of Justice for the purpose of accountability and action.
That is truly a bombshell. If the Trump administration, if she refers this to the DOJ and they bring charges, and you're talking about, and I think it was actually named in some of her documents, is Obama himself, James Clapper, I think he was the DNI at the time, the head of the CIA. I mean, some very, very high-ranking people are named in her documents, which you can find online. They're all out there. She released like more than 100, I think, last night. But I want to show you the gist of what she's arguing here. This is according to a press release issued by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And the key things that she says here is, in the month leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community consistently assessed that Russia is, quote, probably not trying to influence the election by using cyber means. Now, I'm going to highlight a few words here because those are going to be really key to what is actually going on here. So more on that as we go. Next, on December 7th, 2016, after the election, talking points were prepared for the DNI James Clapper, stating, quote, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential outcome, end quote. After December 9th meeting, DNI Clapper's executive assistant sent an email to IC, that's in intelligence community, that's what they call it, the IC leaders, tasking them with creating a new IC assessment, quote, per the president's request, she says. That details the, quote, tools Moscow used and actions it took to influence the 2016 election, end quote. It went on to say that, quote, ODNI will lead this effort with participation from CIA, FBI, NSA, and DHS. Obama officials leaked false statements, she claims, to media outlets, including the Washington Post, claiming that, quote, Russia has attempted claiming that Russia has attempted through cyber means to interfere in, and I should have highlighted that word there, if not actively influence the outcome of an election. Now, there are two things that are at stake here. One is that up to that second bullet there, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential election outcome. That's what the intelligence assessment was at the time. And in case you're not familiar with that, the claim was that Russia was going to try and actually change the vote and make sure that Trump won, according to the claim that that's what Russia wanted to do. Those, by the intelligence community's own assessment, were unsuccessful, that Russia didn't have the capacity, and that whatever attempts they may have made through some of these bot farms and some of these other things that they did were not successful at all, and none of it stuff. So all the firewalls held, none of the stuff got into that, and so none of the votes were changed. So that was a complete and utter failure. If that was the Russia's attempt, it was a total fiasco. But the influence was a separate issue. Most of the information that came out at the time was that, yes, Russia definitely did use it. I remember seeing a report many years ago now that detailed how Russia had tried to do this, but it was a pretty small scale. They used a number of bot farms and influencers to try and influence people in one direction or another. And I remember thinking at the time that it was a pathetic effort. Because the American people aren't stupid. Look, we've got a lot of people trying to influence the election fair and free and open here in the United States. And there are millions of social media posts, etc., and ads and speeches by various campaigns, whatever. Those are the things that flood us every day. And this comparatively fraction of a tiny percent that Russia had. I mean, you can't even say it was 1%. It was some very small sliver mixed into this. And the idea that Russia is going to be able to influence the American people is just ludicrous. And it's embarrassing that people actually thought that, because the American people are going to come up to whatever voice decision they want. And they're paying attention to American commentary or other people. And yeah, you can slip things in here and there like AI does all the time with other kinds of bots. Lots of people were trying very aggressively to influence things one way or the other. But Americans come to the choice that they come to. I mean, we're not stupid in that sense. We're going to go with wherever our emotions are. And everybody is trying to influence us. So this is lost in a sea of a lot of people trying. So I thought the whole thing was kind of overblown and kind of ridiculous. But the question at hand is, though, that did the Obama administration manipulate intelligence? As Tulsi said there, that they changed the intelligence in order to make something happen. And now then we have to get into the fact that, are there two separate things that we're talking about here? Was there, one, an attempt by Russia to change the vote through cyber means to try to get into the machines and change the vote tallies, etc.? And was there also an attempt to influence the election? It's very clear in there's no confusion on this point that they definitely tried to interfere. That's common knowledge. But the question is, did the Obama administration change the intelligence? And that's what Tulsi's claiming. Now, there's others who don't agree with that. And in fact, Senator Warner on the Democratic side, I was curious to see what their reaction was going to be. They certainly have one. This is being reported this morning in the New York Times. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, said the new report, quote, compared two different things: Russian attempts to hack the voting systems and Russian influence operations meant to sway public opinion. We're talking about apples and oranges, he said. The Russians were not successful at manipulating our election infrastructure, nor did we say they were. Mr. Warner noted that as recently as March, the intelligence community reported that Russia had continued its malign influence to sow dissent in the West. And that's, again, something I'm like, well, obviously they do. Every country does that. We definitely do that. We commonly use information operations. Every country does to one degree or another to try and sway opinion in the target audience or target country, to sway the public, to maybe make them think things the way we want to. It's pretty common and understood. And Russia, I think, has virtually no effect at doing that. I mean, Russia's been saying all kinds of stuff, everything about the Russia-Ukraine war, issues about elections or whatever. They may have their views, they may have their subtle attempts, but it just falls flat. And it doesn't have any more success than ours do over there. But again, those are actually secondary things at the moment. The question is, was there a conspiracy, and did the Obama administration actually try to unseat Trump? Because that's the charge. A years-long coup is the phrase that she used here. Now, interestingly enough, the question is, why now? Why is this coming out right now? And why did no one say anything about this before, especially during the first Trump administration when the Republicans were in charge of everything? Well, as it turns out, they actually spent a lot of time looking into these very issues. And here's Julian Barnes in the New York Times from 2020 when he wrote that, but on Tuesday, a long-awaited Senate review by the members of Mr. Trump's own party effectively undercut those allegations. A three-year review by the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee unanimously found that the intelligence community assessment pinning the blame on Russia and outlining its goals to undercut American democracy was fundamentally sound and untainted by politics. So the Intelligence Committee said that they found that the intelligence community who came up with that assessment in 2016 was fundamentally sound. Russia did try to influence the American people. They failed. The ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, reflects strong tradecraft. This is, again, Republicans are saying this. Sound analytical reasoning and proper justification of disagreement on the one analytical line where it occurred, said Senator Richard M. Burr, Republican of Carolina, and the panel's chairman. The committee found no reason to dispute the intelligence community's conclusion. So that was in 2020. And then here's another one, just ironically, this is just days ago, 12 days ago, I think. Here is Julian Barnes again wrote on July the 2nd. He said that the CIA review of its assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election criticized the agency's leadership at the time for rushing their effort, but did not dispute the conclusion that Russia favored the election of Donald J. Trump. Again, this is the current administration. This is the Trump administration. The CIA says that they did not dispute the conclusions of the Russians. Now, further down in there, then they have the question of this whole Steele dossier. A lot of people were talking about that because that does appear something that was intentionally manipulated to try and negatively influence the American population, not from the Russians, but from Democrats against Trump. The classified assessment included an annex with a summary of a dossier created by a former British intelligence officer that contained unverifiable allegations about Mr. Trump. The inclusion of the dossier, the new report found, ran counter to the intelligence community's fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of a key judgment. So the intelligence community said this whole thing relying on the Steele dossier was undercut the credibility of it. And so they said it was an error. It was wrong. And it's been exposed as being very much politically motivated. He continued, when confronted with specific flaws in the dossier by two mission center leaders, one with extensive operational experience and the other with a strong analytical background, the report said that Mr. Brennan, quote, appeared more swayed by the dossier's general conformity with existing theories than legitimate tradecraft. So you have Mr. Brennan here, the former leader in the intelligence community under the Obama administration, is saying, yeah, look, we were going after what we thought was a political motivated. So I don't think there's any doubt that Brennan was going against Trump, didn't like him and wanted to cast aspersions on him. But the question is, does that lead to a coup? Because I don't understand, and I haven't gone through all these. So let me just actually say right up front that there's apparently well over 100 documents that have all kinds of pages in it. So I haven't gone through all these. So I don't know at this point. We're just giving you what we know as of the morning after this thing dropped. So maybe she does have somewhere in there outlined how this years-long coup, which is an extremely strong statement and serious charge that better have a lot of very powerful evidence behind it, especially if you're going to refer for charges to the Department of Justice. I haven't seen anything so far that shows, other than some unsavory actions, some definite manipulation. There was some lying going on because apparently Brennan knew that these things weren't true. They manufactured it. They paid this guy that they knew he was a political operative, and they wanted to claim that he was an intelligence person, whatever, that had access. That's all pretty clear true. That's accurate as well. And that might even warrant some censure. But the question is, does that equate to a conspiracy led by President Obama himself, continued on over, quote, years, to lead to a coup to unseat and get rid of Donald Trump? I haven't seen anything on that. So I'm going to be real interested to continue to follow this and see where that information leads, because I haven't seen it so far. And you got to be real careful that you don't, in an effort to uncover the truth, actually have some more exaggerations that also politicize the intelligence community in a different direction, because all of it's bad, every bit of it. What the Obama team did was bad, and if this is something similar, it's bad too, and all of it together undercuts the trust. Tulsi made a statement in that comment there that we have to restore the trust, and I'm all about that. But she's got to be really, really careful with what comes next, because she's got to be able to back this up with some pretty solid evidence, physical evidence that leads to a reasonable conclusion that these things are true. Otherwise, it looks like it's just another attempt to politicize the intelligence community. We'll see how it works out. You can count on us. We're going to continue to follow this for you. I want to shift gears here. Speaking of trouble in hot water, Donald Trump. One of the things that have been talking about, one of the questions that honestly a lot of people are asking, is the timing of this. I mentioned a minute ago that this stuff has been out there for a long time. It was years-long investigations from the Trump, his own Senate, Republican-led Senate. They come out things. You saw Julian Barnes just 12 days ago talking about a lot of these things here with the CIA, et cetera. So all this stuff has been out there. None of it's been new, but all of a sudden this big bombshell drops right when Trump is in all kinds of hot water with the Epstein files release issue. Now, you may have seen that there was a report in the Wall Street Journal that came out that said, some new additional information that was made public, that apparently, I want to say it was 2003, that Trump allegedly wrote something in a book that Ghislaine Maxwell put together for Epstein's 50th birthday, and it included allegedly a drawing of a naked woman and some lewd things written on it or something like that. Trump says, of course, he didn't do that. And some people wonder, well, is that the thing that had him spooked? And my gut tells me that wasn't it, because I mean, if you know anything about Trump at all, you know that he's got a long history of that kind of stuff about lewd behavior. I mean, who can forget the Access Hollywood tape right before the 2016 election that came out that had him saying, well, some things that he said. You can Google that if you don't know. So this kind of seems in line with that, and it doesn't seem like that would have him upset. But you can see that he was spooked by something about the whole issue about releasing the files, and I don't think it was just that. So one wonders if there's another shoe to drop with all of this. And Trump is trying to get past this. And, I'm sure you've all by now seen all the comments about the, Pam Bondi saying in February that, yes, the client list is on my desk and I'm reviewing it right now. And then she walked that back a week or two ago and said, actually, no, I said the file was on my desk, but I didn't really say the list was on my. No one's buying that. So there's something fishy going on. There's smoke. The question is there fire too? Because something just doesn't seem right. And of course, President Trump's base is all up in arms about this. For the Democrats, of course, seem mainly to just be content to just fold their arms and sit on the sidelines and watch the MAGA folks and the president's team go back and forth and attack each other. But they don't seem to be going away with this. And we'll see if they're going to or not. Trump told everybody it's not important. Don't worry about this. Don't look here. And then today, I think that's today. What is that? Yeah, that's today, this morning. Trump says, okay, I have asked the Justice Department to release all grand jury testimony with respect to Jeffrey Epstein, subject only to court approval. With that being said, and even if the court gave its full unwavering approval, nothing will be good enough for troublemakers and radical left lunatics making the request. It's not the left that's making the request. It will always be more MAGA. Here's the thing about this. That is like a fig leaf here. The grand jury testimony, that's not going to contain the information that everybody's looking for. It's not going to contain the client list and a bunch of other stuff. Some of that stuff was redacted. It was all in the grand jury. It was focused on one specific area or one primary area anyway. And so that's nothing comprehensive about that. So I doubt seriously whether that's going to satisfy the MAGA base, who have been saying, for a long time that they want this. And, Trump had been promising the release of all the information here, et cetera. We'll see what happens next. But just watch this, because probably when that testimony is released, and I imagine it probably will be, it's going to be just a fig leaf trying to cover it over. It will not satisfy. It's just not going to satisfy the people who are after. So the question is going to be, how effective does Trump and his team get at distracting people and moving on to whatever's next? Because definitely he wants to. My guess is that there's something, I don't know whether it's about him personally, whether it's about some of his allies, I don't know, but it seems like there's something has him spooked and he doesn't want that information out there. We'll see if I'm the only one that thinks that way, or if other people are going to push further, or if they're going to let it go. We'll have to wait and see how that goes out. Last thing I want to talk about to you today is back to the foreign policy issue, Iran. There has been some information out, and let me pull this up here. Iran is saying basically, look, this if you think this is over, it's not, or at least we don't consider it to. This is from Newsweek. The Trump administration is pushing back against a new intelligence assessment that contradicts President Trump's repeated claim that U.S. airstrikes obliterated Iran's nuclear facility last month. According to 5 current and former U.S. officials familiar with the assessment, NBC News reported that while Iran's Fordo nuclear weapon site was mostly destroyed in the U.S. military operation, the Isfahan and Natanz sites have only been partially set back by months and could resume operations. In response, Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell posted on X, quote, false. The credibility of the fake news media is similar to that of the current state of the Iranian nuclear facilities. Destroyed in the dirt. It would take years to recover. Yeah, that's what you hope to be true, but we're not sure that is actually accurate. And the Iranians, I think I showed you yesterday, they're continuing to say, hey, the Ayatollah said, we're going to continue to defend ourselves. And if you restart anything, we're going to finish what we started. And the Ayatollah especially was pretty brash about it. But the issue is, I mean, that's claiming that of the 3 sites, it's the Fordo that they claim was the most set back, and we don't even know. So here's the problem. If you're saying the Isfahan and the other facility are the ones that weren't completely destroyed, then that tells you the likelihood, because Fordo was the deepest buried, it could be that none of the 3 facilities were essentially were knocked out. And that's really saying something, because the Fordo, the Isfahan and the I can't think the other one, those 2 were primarily above ground, and they had some that were below ground, but not as far as the Fordo. That was the one that was the best defended. And if all of our attacks didn't do anything to other, just set it back a couple of months, then there's some real problems that we have here. And again, I harken back to what Ted Postal said on our show earlier this week, that even if they had destroyed all that stuff, we're still in a lot of trouble, because the absolute core issue is, where is that 408 kilograms of reprocessed plutonium at the 60 level. That is everything, because you can rebuild the centrifuges. That's not hard to do. Iran has the engineering capacity. They have the production capacity. They can make new those centrifuges. They obviously did them before. They can do that again. But if the systems themselves weren't damaged or destroyed, rather, and can just be repaired and brought back online within months, then that tells you, because the IAEA inspectors are no longer there, that we're not going to know if Iran makes that decision, because we don't led to believe, anyway, that there are information that 2 of those 3 sites for sure could be brought back online within months, and we still don't know. There could still be a secret site somewhere else. As Ted Postal told you about, it could be a very small area. We don't know for sure where it may be, because these things happen so that you can build them without anyone knowing about it. Now, if the IAEA was still in the country, you'd have a better chance. But of course, now then that we attack those sites, we've lost those eyes and ears. So the bottom line is, we still don't have any knowledge about whether Iran has made a decision to take a bomb any more than we did before. But what has changed is that now that we no longer have visibility, so our ability to collect information and intelligence, both from us and the Mossad in Israel, is significantly compromised over what it was here. And my big fear is that one day Iran will just announce, we have a nuclear weapon that has made it onto a missile. And then we'll be faced with, are they bluffing? Or are they just saying that? Or do they really have it? And how are you going to test that? Because you're certainly not going to know where that missile is and where those missiles are. Ted said that they had enough material to produce potentially up to 10 bombs. We'll see what happens with that. But if that happens, then you have radically changed the security dynamics throughout the entire Middle East, and there will be some real problems to have to deal with in that case, because then everyone's going to be able to go back to and say, this moment where Israel first launched an attack against Iran, and then the U.S. joined with it and hit those nuke sites, which caused us to blind ourselves with intelligence. And now there's just too many unknowns. And if they come up with a nuclear bomb, you can circle back to right here, because without these attacks, they wouldn't have been able to do it. We'll continue to monitor that, and if any updates come, we'll certainly bring those to you. Thanks very much for joining us today, folks. I appreciate you joining us on a Saturday afternoon. A lot of things happen in the world, and if anything else breaks in between now and Monday, we'll bring that to you live. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you on Monday, where we have a great lineup. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss any shows this week. We got some great guests on, and obviously things keep happening around the world, and we're unintimidated and uncompromised to bring them to you, because you deserve to know the truth. Further your life around you. Thanks very much, and we'll see you on Monday on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.